Okay, so good evening, fellow Willowdalers, and welcome to our Yonge Street North Secondary Plan Appeal Information Session. As some of you may have received a letter in the mail that informed you that there's going to be the beginning of a process led by the Ontario Land Tribunal. We thought it would be important to hear what's happening in our planning department and best inform people, because there is the opportunity for people who live in Willowdale or beyond to participate as well in the appeal process. So that is why we're here today. And before we begin, I just want to do a pitch for Sunday night. We are having a webinar on Budget 101. It's very important to learn about how your tax dollars are being allocated, and you also will have a chance to participate because you can register to depute next week, and the deadline to register to depute at the budget is 4:30 next Monday. You have to register. You can register by emailing buca@toronto.ca. And then on Tuesday, we'll be at North York Center, I think from 1 to 9:30, listening to all your great ideas and thoughts about our budget. So please join us on Sunday to find out more about the budget, and then hopefully you can also depute next Tuesday. Okay, so without further ado, we have two wonderful staff members from our city who are here to guide us through and learn about the Yonge Street appeal that's happening, Yonge Street North Secondary Plan Appeal. So I thought I would invite our guests to first introduce themselves and tell us why they signed up for this crazy job. So let's start with Guy. Why don't you start?
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Good evening, everybody. My name is Guy Matthew. I'm the manager for community planning for Ward 18 and 17 up in North York, and I worked on the secondary plan. So many of you may remember me from the public meetings that we held a couple of years ago, spoke with you on the phone, and I worked on that along with Victoria, who will introduce herself in a minute. Why do I do city planning? That's a great question, and I could spend all night talking about it. But I think it's a great opportunity to shape the city, to have input in the way the city that I live in, the city I grew up in, transforms from what it used to be into the new ages, and thinking about all the things about building complete communities, the environment, and how do we grow in a sustainable way, transit, how do you bring all those different pieces together? So, and every day is different. It's not, you'll be talking about environment one day and transit the next day. So it's not all, my parents were both in finance, so it's not just the same numbers day after day after day, which to me seemed boring and convinced me to not do that job. So I find this job nice because it's every day is a little bit different. So that's part of the reason I enjoy the job anyways.
Thanks. And your office is located at
North York Civic Center.
So you're right in our neighborhood. And what's your favorite lunchtime takeout then?
Oh, California Thai. They know my order.
For those who don't know, that's in the food court at North York Center. And how about you, Victoria? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Victoria Foos. I'm a senior planner in community planning. I was on Guy's team, but I now work in Toronto and East York, but I'm still very familiar with the North York context. I co-wrote the secondary plan with Guy. And I think, why did I get into city planning? I think my answer is kind of similar to Guy. It might be the only thing we agree on. I grew up in Scarborough, and I really wanted to find a job that would allow me to shape the city. And I had a really amazing experience in Scarborough, and I thought that city planning was the way to go. So very, very similar to Guy's experience.
And where is your office now located?
I'm now in City Hall, but as we continue work on North York projects, I make my way to North York. So you may still see me around North York Center.
Great. And your favorite local takeout?
Local takeout. Ooh, probably I have to say the pierogies from the farmers market, which we can only get once a week. That was on Thursdays. So
yes, that They're very good pierogies. Well, thank you so much. So I thought maybe the first thing that would be very helpful is to orient us. Not everyone has perhaps seen the Yonge Street North secondary plan, or actually let's step one step back. And what is a secondary plan? There's probably people here who they're like Yonge Street North, that's me, but they maybe don't know what does secondary plan mean.
Guy, do you want me to start? Do you
Sure,
want to take it?
go for it.
Okay. So we have a hierarchy of planning documents in the city. We have our provincial planning documents, which are the provincial policy statement and the growth plan. They're kind of at the top of the hierarchy, and then flowing down from that is something we call our official plan. So our official plan is a citywide document that is intended to guide how the city is going to grow, shape the city as it continues to change. It's a pretty broad document because it is citywide. So not all of the direction is kind of applicable in an area specific manner. So that's where secondary plans come in. They're an area wide or a specific area wide plan that provides policy direction for growth and development. So that's what the Yonge Street North secondary plan does. Its intention is to guide change and growth in a manner that we see appropriate. And it looks to secure all of the things that we need to shape a complete community to support new residents and employees that would be coming to this area, and existing residents and employees as well. So that's kind of what a secondary plan looks to do. It's a long-term visioning document. We don't expect that change is going to happen immediately. It is a long-term plan, about 25 years. And like I said, it's really intended to guide how changes to occur within a specific area. So the Yonge Street North secondary plan came as the result of what we called the Yonge Street North planning study. It was a study that I think spread out across 10 plus years. And so many of you would have been familiar with us when we came out to the community to consult through that planning study process. So in July of 2022, we put forward the secondary plan to City Council and they adopted it. So that is now city adopted document. Unfortunately, though, it was appealed by 18 different appellants to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and that brings us to this evening's meeting. So before I get any further ahead, Lily or Councillor Tang, I will let you guide us further.
Yeah, that's very informative. And all of this information is readily available on the City of Toronto website. If you simply Google Yonge Street North planning study or Yonge Street North secondary plan, you can see the official document that was adopted at council. And in the document, you can actually see the map of what it looks like. So actually I could maybe...
I've just sent it in the chat, so hopefully everybody can see that.
I'll just pull it up a bit here. So this is the map that kind of shows the coverage. So it's, is it from Bishop or is it from Drury?
It's from Cummer Drury up to Steeles, and then it's mainly kind of Lavière to Willowdale.
Great.
But in the south portion, it doesn't go all the way to Willowdale. It kind of cuts in.
Okay.
If you're on, yeah, I'm not sure which document you're on, but there's a black and white boundary one that may be more helpful. Yeah, if you scroll all the way down to the maps there.
Okay, there you go.
Or that, yeah, that one there, the solid black lines are the boundary of the secondary plan.
Right. So there's lots of information here that you can see in terms of the different sections that are being neighborhoods, it looks like, and you can read more about it. So before we continue about the appeal, I just wanted to check in with everyone. Does anyone have any questions? If you do, can you put up your hand, please? And then, or you could type it in the chat. So you could type a question in the chat, or you could put up your hand and ask it. No questions. Oh, can you attach the link in the chat? It is there. Oh, no, that's not there. You did the, yes, I can attach the link in the chat.
I'm sending that now.
Oh, great.
Oh, Guy just did it.
Great. Okay, here's a question. How closely do you work with the provincial level of government on a secondary plan, and what has been done to reduce the appeals we are experiencing?
So we don't work with the provincial government. The provincial government has a set of policies they put out through their growth plan and through their provincial policy statement, amongst some other plans. Not all the plans they issue, like their Greenbelt plan, apply to the City of Toronto, but the ones that do, we are required for our documents to be in compliance with those. So it's not, we don't have discussions with staff there, but in our analysis and in our policy writing, we have to make sure that our plans are in conformity or don't conflict with those provincial policies.
Right.
And as far as what's being done to reduce the appeals, I mean, that's very difficult for us to control. We try and put out the best document that we can that guides growth for the city. But there will be people who want more, or there will be people than what we're providing for, or there will be people who have concerns, maybe they were providing too much. But there's not a lot that we can do to stop people from filing appeals.
Mm-hmm. From our staff member, Saham is asking, what is the process for coordinating population growth with the TDSB and I think it's TCDSB.
Yeah, the Catholic Board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so as part of the study, we did a lot of consultation with residents, but we did other consultation that you wouldn't have seen. So we had technical advisory committee, and we talked to a number of service agencies, reached out to them. Not all agencies got back to us with the same level of detail or interest, but we certainly circulated information to those two boards, plus the two French boards, the French Public and the French Catholic board as well, for feedback. They didn't all provide, I don't think we got any feedback from some of those, and certainly to different levels, but we did have conversations with them about it.
And you also worked with the other departments in the city, I'm assuming, like Parks and Recreation and other infrastructure pieces, to make sure that it's a whole design and not just about the buildings. Yeah,
we worked with Parks, Engineering and Construction Services, our transportation people. We did a transportation master plan at the same time, working with transportation services and consultants. So it was a wholesome approach. We didn't just look at built form. We didn't just look at use. We looked at all the things that make up a community and all the pieces that would affect day-to-day life, and how do you try and build that complete community.
And how long did that take?
Years.
How many
It took
gray
a
hairs
long
do I have?
time. But towards the end, once we started narrowing our focus and kind of the vision that we saw for the plan, everything started to come together. So our conversations, once we knew the built form that we were anticipating and the expected population growth that would generate, we were able to give some of those numbers to our friends at the school board, to PFNR, which are Parks, Forestry, and Recreation, so we could start to understand how many more facilities do we need to support the population that we expect to grow. So we do have policies in the plan that are school board related. We worked with our school board friends to draft policies that we incorporated. We also have parks related policies and community services and facilities policies, which the intention is that both the city and private developers will refer to as they bring forward applications to ensure that the growth, like we said, is captured in a complete community, so that we're getting everything that we need to support people living and working in the area.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Victoria. The policies aren't just about what a developer has to do. It also provides guidance on future things that the city will do as well. So provides guidance on where parkland should be, where city parks should be focusing future park acquisitions, transportation improvements to our existing road network, that sort of thing. So there's direction in it to transportation services and that sort of thing. It's not just something that developers are supposed to look at. It's also it's a working document for city staff as well and city divisions.
Great, thank you. And I just want to say to people who are watching the live stream, because we are live streaming this on YouTube as well as Facebook, that if you have a question, you can type it in the comments, and then someone will then send that question to me and I can ask it. So if you're watching this from Facebook or YouTube, please ask your questions in the comments and we'll make sure that they're answered. And one of the questions from Facebook is a perfect question for today's webinar, which is, what are the objections? Why do we have these appeals? And what are the grounds for them?
So we received 18 appeals. So there's 18 appeals to the secondary plan. And I mean, the short answer is they're all different. And they all have their own reasons, but there's not a lot of limitation from the Ontario Land Tribunal as to you can only object for this, or this reason. They have to justify their appeal, and essentially they are essentially taking the position that one or more of the policies in the secondary plan don't conform to those provincial policies. Or they don't think it's good planning. So somebody might take an issue with height in a particular area. Somebody else may be taking issue with the width of a road. So they're very different. It's not 18 appeals that all just say the height's wrong somewhere. So it's a broad range of reasons that these appeals have been filed.
Yeah, I'll just add that a number of the appeals are what we call site-specific appeals. So they're not an appeal to the entirety of the plan. They're an appeal because there's a landowner who doesn't like what the plan directs for their land. So for example, some sites we've said are appropriate to have tall buildings. Other sites we've said are more appropriate to have mid-rise built form. So, about 14 stories. So if you're a property owner and we're telling you could only have 14 stories, that is the case. That's the reason for some of them appealing. So they're saying that that direction conflicts with provincial policy direction, and therefore they should be able to build, more intense build forms. So that's a number of the appeals. We have a number of development applications for the landowners that did appeal. We're hoping that through this process, there'll be an opportunity to kind of work through those issues as the applications progress.
So 18 separate appeals, how many of those are site specific?
I would say probably most of them are site specific, where we have a landowner that either has an application in or we suspect an application will be coming. But there are still some, even as part of the site specific, that have, issues with a policy that is plan wide. So one of the policies somebody's objecting to is we've directed for a certain percentage of 2 and 3 bedroom units in developments of a certain size so that we can plan for families. There's there's a landowner that is appealing that specific policy. So as we work through the issue, maybe it'll be that policy won't apply to that site, but our intention is that it would continue to apply to all of the other lands in the secondary plan area. So we'll really start kind of hashing out everybody's specific issues once we're before the tribunal, and that first date is at the end of this month.
Wow, that sounds like it could be quite a chaotic conversation as everybody puts their issues on the table. There's a question from Anne McConnell. Do you have the staff and resources to plan for the appeal?
I mean, the short answer is yes. I mean, we do these appeals all the time. But Victoria and I both have experience going to the tribunal. It's part of our job. So yes, city legal, who take carriage of the appeal as a whole, have direction from city council to go and support the secondary plan. And then they will bring forward experts such as Victoria or myself for the planning piece, somebody else for the transportation piece, to bring forward that evidence. And we have the internal expertise to do that.
Great. Vicky Sanderson is asking, are the identities of the appellants public information?
Yes, I don't see why not.
They are, I think, on the Ontario Land Tribunal website, and they were I think they were all listed in the mailer that went out about the Ontario Land Tribunal.
I don't know that I've seen the notice, but yeah, I mean, the first hearing at the end of the month, they're all going to be there. So I think it's common knowledge as to who they are.
And is the 31st the beginning of a process? Like, it's not all going to be hashed out in one night?
Absolutely not. This is going to be a likely years long process. So Monday is our first, or not Monday, the 31st is our first meeting before the tribunal. And that will really just be an opportunity for all of the parties, so all of the appellants, to identify themselves and any other parties that wish to come forward. There's also an opportunity for participants to identify themselves as well. And we can speak a little bit more about the difference between the two. So that's going to be the first, the intention of our first meeting, and it will likely be a request from the tribunal that everybody puts their issues together in what we call an issues list. So that will help us begin to navigate what is a site-specific issue, what is a plan-wide issue. And then from there, there'll likely be the scheduling of numerous more dates before we'd be in a position to either mediate. So that's where we would start trying to work through issues with either specific landowners or with all of the appellants, or proceed to what we call a contested hearing, which is where the city and all of the appellants would be bringing forward evidence before the tribunal, defending each other. We'd be defending our position, which is that this is a good plan that conforms to provincial policy. The appellant would be bringing forward evidence that says the opposite. And then it's ultimately up to the tribunal to decide where they're going to go with it, and whether or not they would approve the plan as it currently exists, if they would modify it. There's a range of outcomes, and we're just so early in the process, we don't know yet, how this is going to go.
So this means that the secondary plan will be delayed in being implemented. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's not in force right now. But that's not to say that portions of it cannot be brought in over time. Pieces that aren't under appeal may be brought forward before the entire document becomes in force. I think regardless of in force or not, council at this point has adopted the vision of that document. So I think it's still helpful in looking at what council's vision is as we look at development applications that get filed while it's still under appeal.
So in the time that it's not official, even though it's been approved at council, does it still hold weight for the other applications that are in the pipeline?
Yeah, I would say it does. It's different weight because it's not enforced, but it's still, an intention of what City Council wants to see in this area. And that's what we'll use to continue to guide our review of development applications. So there may be instances where there's slight variation from it because it's not enforced, but the general vision is something that we will still use. And the expectation is that applications being brought forward are assessed against that secondary plan.
Thank you. Here is another question from Facebook. The Province of Ontario, City of Toronto Memorandum of Understanding on Transit-Oriented Development requires the city to seek and receive public input through an engagement process. Was the province consulted on the lane reduction policies and the impacts on business and existing homeowners in the area?
So again, the city's official plan needs to conform with provincial policy. And we reviewed that. And with regards to traffic, we did a transportation master plan at the same time as we did the study. And the transportation master plan informed some of the policies that we did. And the transportation master plan, there's 4 phases to an environmental assessment, which you need to do to ultimately complete transit infrastructure. So we did the first 2 phases of that, which is kind of where we would normally stop at a policy level. And 3 and 4 get into the very detailed work, exactly what is the grade or something like that. But we've done stages 1 and 2 of the environmental assessment process as well on the transportation thing. So there's no requirement for us to bring the province to every meeting or anything, but we do need to meet we have to have consultation, and we held fairly extensive consultation. And then we need to meet the provincial policies through the provincial policy statement, through the growth plan, considering their 2041 regional transportation master plan, all of those sorts of things.
Thank you. And here is another question. Seems we're very active on Facebook. A lot of questions coming from there. How many missing middle homes do you anticipate in the plan, and will any of them have parking?
I can't give you a number,
Mhm.
because partially because we didn't do it. But the idea behind the missing middle portion, and there's kind of an area within the secondary plan where we're really thinking about kind of missing middle, and how do you bring in multifamily or multi-unit dwellings without disturbing necessarily the character of the area. So the expectation there is that you're not going to see very different buildings. They're going to be a different building type because they're no longer single 1-unit buildings. They're going to have 3 or 4, but they're going to look the same. They should have a similar front yard, lot width, that sort of thing. So roughly what's there now within that area, I guess, is the easiest way to answer the question.
I'll just add to guys that we did do what we call some built form modeling. So we take the area and we try to model some different development scenarios. So if we took 2 detached houses, could we create a triplex that would be compliant with the policy direction? So we did some of that modeling exercise, but our exercise is just one way that the plan could build out. It can build out in a number of different ways. You might have landowners come forward and just redevelop their individual lot. There could be a consolidation of lots. There's different scenarios, so it's really hard for us to create or to identify a certain number of units. We've tried to estimate it through our modeling with future population growth. But again, it's all subject to change because we model one scenario and we try to model it as accurately as we can, but there's a number of different factors that can change. Guy, I don't know if you touched on parking, but I can.
I did.
Okay, so we were as lenient as we could, given that citywide direction in relation to parking requirements has changed recently. So there isn't the same parking requirements that we previously had. So there are still, you can still have parking, but we wanted to give the flexibility that if a developer didn't want to build as much parking as, may have been required in the past, that they didn't have to, especially given the fact that there's transit investment in the area. We did identify some parking related direction in the neighborhood's land. So we don't want to see surface parking lot in people's front yards. That really doesn't create for a nice streetscape. It takes away from soft landscaping, which is really important from a sustainability perspective. So we've provided some direction on where parking may be appropriate, but it's not to say that there will be zero parking or that there will be, extremely high levels of parking. We tried to write these documents so that there's some level of flexibility and that they can be applied in a way either that the market is driven. So if there's a condo, then, there's a certain amount of demand for parking. Our plan can, accommodate that, but the intention is that there is flexibility.
Thank you, Victoria. Here is a question from Richard. Are tribunal hearings open to the general public? Is the schedule of upcoming hearings available?
Yes, anybody can watch if they want to. For now, they remain virtual hearings. They used to be in person. As far as the schedule of upcoming hearings, kind of depends if that's a general question or specific to this appeal. There are always hearings ongoing, and you can check the status of any application on the tribunal's website. And I think somebody posted a link to that. But as far as this development, as far as this appeal goes with regards to secondary plan, we have one date set up for the end of the month, which is what's contained in the notice that everybody received. From there, that's the only meeting that's scheduled. At that meeting, they will likely set another meeting date. And then from then, there may be another meeting date, or they may set the dates for the entire hearing. We expect the hearing itself to be multi-week, but with one or two or maybe more kind of single day hearings to deal with certain elements. But our expectation is that there will be another one-day hearing scheduled within a couple of months of this meeting to deal with procedural things like that. But they don't book all these singular meetings and a hearing all at once. They kind of move incrementally through. So there's this meeting, and at this meeting, they will likely set another date.
Wow, it sounds like it's going to be quite a journey, Victoria, even though you've moved out of North York. You're going to be with us for a while.
Trying to hold on to her.
Yes. Thank you to Steve Boyle, who's president of the Willowdale Central Ratepayers Association. He's shared a helpful link for everyone in the chat, which can also be shared on Facebook, that helps you to see where all the appeals are across the province. So if you're bored, you want to, I don't know, binge on appeals, you could, instead of Netflix, you could click on that link. Okay, Lily, not me, another Lily who is very lovely, is asking, what is the nature of the non-site specific appeals?
I mean, there's a range of them. Like Victoria said, some of them they really only care about their site, but they filed them as just kind of a citywide, or a plan wide. So things like the number of 2 and 3 bedroom units. Some people have appealed the map that shows and the chart that shows future right-of-ways and right-of-way widths. Like, one of the things that the secondary plan does is widen Steeles Avenue in the expectation of a future BRT coming through, which is in the province's 2041 Transportation Master Plan. Off the top of my head, there's 18 of them, so it's hard keeping them all straight. But
there was some language in some of them about, our urban design direction being too prescriptive, so that it's too rigid and too controlling of what can be done. And this usually comes from landowners that own more than one property. So they're trying to protect a range of interests if there's, different properties with different permissions. But it's really the general concern that are identified in the appeals are that, the plan is too limiting. We hear it all the time. The province has a certain mandate about directing growth around transit, which is what this area is and what it's going to continue to be. And so developers often take that to mean they can have whatever they want, however tall they want it. And we agree that this area is an appropriate place for growth, but within certain limitations and in a form that's appropriate. And that's where we have the biggest difference of opinion, I think.
Another question from Facebook. The province of Ontario, City of Toronto MOU on transit-oriented development requires the city to work with the province to seek and receive public input through an engagement process. Why has MPP Stan Cho or the province never attended any of the meetings that have been held?
I don't know.
At the time of our drafting, so Guy, we didn't have a site that was formally identified as a transit-oriented development.
No.
So I think they're kind of two separate things. So transit-oriented development or transit-oriented community is a program from the province and where they partner with a developer, so a third party, to deliver transit. And as part of that partnership, there's typically you know, development that would come along with it. So that transit is typically integrated within a development, and in partnering with a developer, oftentimes that developer will build out the transit infrastructure on behalf of the province. So those discussions happen when a specific site or development has been identified and is captured under that TOC or TOD program at the province. So the work that we did and the transportation work that we did was separate from that. So that may be why there hadn't been as much provincial involvement as there would have been if we had a TOD identified.
Great. This is a sidebar question from Vicki Sanderson. She's just asking about supportive and emergency housing. What can constituents do to advocate for supportive and emergency housing in Willowdale? I think that would be through the SSHA.
Yeah, I mean, talking to that or talking to your local councillor and expressing your interest in that being something that comes forward. I mean, a secondary plan doesn't get into things like emergency housing. That's something that it's emergency, right? So it's reactive and as council policy and council directed. So it's kind of beyond the scope of this plan.
To that end, you know, we've heard that successful communities are mixed income communities, which is very hard when real estate is so expensive. Is there any, I guess, calculation of like, is there an intentional way to create this plan that would include mixed income housing? Or I guess you wouldn't say mixed income, mixed affordability.
But incorporate affordable housing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so the only tool, we're going to get really deep into planning right now, okay. But the only tool that the city has, so us city planners, we don't have very much authority. The authority that we get to require affordable housing comes from a mechanism called inclusionary zoning. So it's a fairly new mechanism that the province has given to municipalities, and it allows us to require affordable housing within certain areas of a city. And they have to be identified within an area that we call a protected major transit station area. So it's an area that's surrounding a transit station area. There's usually a radius of about 800 meters. And within those areas, we can use inclusionary zoning to require and secure affordable housing in developments above a certain size. But in order for us to use that tool, we need to have that protected major transit station area delineated and approved. Where we have an issue right now is the province has not yet approved our protected major transit station areas, which is preventing us from using that tool to require affordable housing. So there have been recent changes to Section 37, which was a tool that municipalities could use in instances where we saw developments that exceeded the as of right height and density. So the zoning said you could have 4 stories, but you were building 12. In instances like that, we were able to use a tool called Section 37 to secure community benefits. So that may have been affordable housing. It may have been money towards a new community center. It could have been a daycare. We no longer have that tool. It's been replaced with something called the community benefits charge, which is quite limiting in how we can use it and how much money we get from it. So a lot of these provincial changes have changed the way in which we can work with developers to create complete communities.
Or we're just forced to create incomplete communities. I think Bill 23 also kneecapped inclusionary zoning to 25 years. So even once they define these transit zones, 25 years is a drop in the bucket in terms of building that affordability. And the definition of affordability is also, I think, up for debate, because I think it's defined as 10 to 20% below market, and a lot of people would not find that affordable. So we have so much work to do in that area, but I will not get on my soapbox because Guy Matthew said, don't get on your soapbox.
Secondary plan.
Yes, yes. Okay, back to the issue at hand. So Doug and Anne are asking, is anyone appealing the transportation part of the plan?
So you can't appeal the transportation master plan. It's like a separate document, but that informed our transportation policies. It is the work contained in that document informed, rationalized the rights of way widths that we were seeking that are in the secondary plan. So like I said, Steele's being widened to accommodate a future BRT. Right now, the official plan says one width. Our secondary plan will make Steele's in this area a little bit wider so we can accommodate future transit. So that the policies are in the secondary plan that can be appealed. The transportation master plan itself can't, but it's the rationale behind the policies.
Got it. John Crisati is asking who are the tribunal members, but Steve Boyle has helpfully posted a link where everyone can click in the chat and they can see who are the tribunal members who are supposed to be independent. Yeah, everyone has to just, I think we trust that they're making independent decisions as a tribunal. What Doug and Ann are asking, what are options for the general public to voice their views? So this is the kind of the crux of part of our conversation. You know, in the mailer, it said that you can register to be a participant. What does that mean? And I think for people who live in Willowdale, we really want to just make sure our community has the best outcome possible. And in this appeal process, there's going to be a lot of competing interests. And, you know, certainly we should all feel a certain weight of the years that have gone into a plan designed by our own city staff. But then we have the interest of really private companies, developers, who certainly their best interest is not necessarily the same as the greater community. So all that being said, does the voice of the community have a place in the appeal process? And if so, what does that look like to your knowledge?
Yeah, so Victoria mentioned kind of the two different roles that people can play in a hearing, party or participant. And the expectations are very different. So the people who appeal in the city of Toronto will be parties to the hearing. And if you're a party to the hearing, and anybody can also try and show up and also make an argument for why they should be a party. But if you're going to be a party, you then you're expected to bring forward evidence. You have the ability to cross-examine if you want, but there's an expectation that you're going to be there for the full, however many weeks it is every day, that you're going to bring forward evidence to put forward an opinion. Now, city legal, along with the professional staff at the city, are going to be putting forward city council's adopted plan. We will be making arguments in support of that document. And calling all the evidence, and our lawyers will cross-examine the experts of the appellants. The other option is to be a participant, and the expectations are a lot. I don't want to use expectation is the wrong word. The expectations of what you're going to do are much more limited. So you can provide essentially written testimony that kind of puts forward your opinion, why you think this is good, or why you think it's bad. And then that will go as part of the record, and the tribunal member will consider it. Now, the tribunal member is going to weigh the evidence. It will not be taken, a letter written in by a member of the public will not be given the same weight as a day and a half of expert testimony by a professional planner. They will put more weight on that expert. That's not to say that it's not a helpful thing to do, but I just want to be clear on like the level of weight that's going to be given to something. I mean, it's kind of like in a court case, right? There's going to be more evidence. There's going to be a lot more weight put on that crime scene expert's opinion about something as opposed to a layperson's opinion about the same thing. So those are the two roles that you can play. Most residents in my experience take the participant route. It's expensive to be a party, to be frank. And assuming you're supportive of the secondary plan, you have city legal and professional staff attending to back up that council adopted plan.
So when do people submit written testimony? Because right now, the mailer that we got has only 11 of the, I think, did you say 18 appeals? So it looks like people filed after they mailed out the notification. So it'd be very hard for someone to write a testimony for January 31st without knowing what is being appealed. So is there a specific time when people are then invited to submit their written testimony?
Yeah, I mean, now frankly is too early. My suggestion would be, if you're interested in doing that and being a participant, you should show up, virtually log in at the 31st and identify yourself as wanting to be a participant. And then there will be a discussion about when these things should be shared. But you don't need to do it now, but you do need to show up and identify that you want to be a participant and you do want to provide that.
Just further to Guy's point, I shared a link just now in the chat with which will take you to the tribunal's website, and it's where all their forms are provided. So if you do want to participate either as a party or as a participant, there is a form that you fill out. It's a request form to the tribunal, and ideally it would be submitted 10 days before the hearing. And that will give the tribunal kind of advance notice that they can expect that you may be coming. You can still show up on the 31st, and if you hadn't submitted your form, it will be up to the member's discretion of whether or not they will allow you to be a participant. But that there is that form. It's a request form. It will ask for some information about your position. So, identifying if you have specific concerns, if you're in support, if you're against. Those types of things, I think you can likely provide at this time if you have a position. But as we kind of get into it a little bit more, I think that's where you would hash out your position a little bit further and submit that then to the tribunal at a later time.
Great. And if there are people who wanted to support the city's efforts and be a participant, speaking on behalf of supporting that, would that be welcome? Would it be helpful? And what would that look like?
We're always happy for support and assistance. It looks, I mean, frankly, the participation doesn't look any different whether you're going to support or you're going to oppose. You still file the paperwork Victoria mentioned, and you ultimately still provide your written thoughts. It would just be positive and supportive of the plan. And you can look at the staff report and the link that was put in the chat and look at the reasons why staff think that the policies in the secondary plan are appropriate. And if you agree with those, I mean, you could reference those if they think it's helpful. But what you physically literally do, whether you're against or for or against, is essentially the same thing. It's just, what does that letter contain?
I think, regardless where people stand on the actual plan, I think most people would say they want a plan to govern our community. And sometimes when things go to OLT, it feels very much like our city is being designed without a plan because of the override that the OLT is able to take. So I'm always in favor of standing up for having a plan. It's better than the randomness that seems to emerge. The next two questions are kind of similar. So I'm going to ask them both and then you can kind of put them together. So one is from Facebook, and the worry is, are they going to flood our neighborhood with cars? So with the parking limitation or not limitation, but with builders are not forced to do what they previously had to do in terms of parking availability, will it end up spilling onto the streets of our neighborhood? That's one question. And the other question, which is similar, is how will parking options be addressed under the plan for the proposed changes to Yonge Street that may reduce parking on Yonge Street? So a little different, both about parking. One, not having enough parking for people who live in the new units, and will that result in car spillage into the neighborhood? And the other is by limiting parking on Yonge Street, what will be done to address options for the community?
I mean, parking can get addressed in a number of ways. Obviously, the city has the ability to do permit parking, which then requires you to have a permit, which we could only limit, like there's abilities to do it through that. But I mean, frankly, the concern about builders building huge condos with zero parking is you have to keep in mind that they need to sell the condo. And often there's a certain amount of demand for people buying a condo. They want to be able to park a car, or they won't buy the unit. So I think the reality is we're not at Queen Station downtown. So there are going to be people who want cars, are going to want parking spaces. And so you're not going to see zero parking. But I mean, the unpopular piece is also our roads are for everybody, right? And so there's going to be a balance there. But I mean, the transportation master plan that we looked at, and our transportation experts looked at, are kind of comfortable with the amount of like street parking. They're comfortable with the impacts of balancing active transportation with other road users like cars and parking. So we think there's a balance there, but like I said, council does have other things in its ability, like permit parking, no parking, only park between this hour and this hour. So there's a number of options around things like that. And the same thing goes with concern about cars coming into the neighborhood. You can do one-way streets, you can do turn restrictions. There's a number of options there. A secondary plan level, it's not going to solve all the traffic concerns. A lot of this comes down to bylaws, site-specific zoning bylaws, and then traffic bylaws, that sort of thing.
And I do have bad news for everyone. There is going to be a lot of traffic, especially as Yonge Street North, the subway construction, the subway extension begins. We've been having preliminary discussions about it, and it sounds like multi-year lane reductions on Yonge Street, and multi-year, we're talking possibly a decade. So we have to work with Metrolinx and the city and have clear communication about it, but all this to say traffic is coming. And so many of you, including Guy and Victoria, maybe you know someone who's a little famous in our neighborhood, Raymond Jean. Some people call him the Willowdale Wikipedia because he knows a whole lot about the developments. And he has let us know in the chat that the redevelopment proposals north of us, so north of Steeles and Vaughan, are also being appealed for their secondary plan. And what part of the appeal will predict the appeal of Yonge Street North secondary plan? So you have two appeals happening, and both designs are kind of, I think, trying to work in synergy with each other. So how will those appeals, I guess, impact each other?
So I think he's referring to the Yonge, oh no, I'm going to get it wrong. Yonge Steeles Corridor secondary plan, which is the secondary plan that Vaughan passed a number of years ago. So it deals with I mean, it goes way up into Vaughan, but it deals with Steeles west of Yonge Street. Markham was on the east side. The city of Toronto was actually a party to that hearing. We participated. With the plan-wide appeals are done. I think they're still dealing with appeals of specific development applications. But essentially that secondary plan is done and largely enforced at this point. So it's kind of over. How will it affect the decisions made in that? How will it affect ours? I don't expect it to really affect ours. I mean, there may be, some people may make contextual arguments because there are some heights being contemplated in Vaughan that are higher than our plan in the 80 and 90 story range, right at the corner. So they may try and point to that as, well, we should get that on the Toronto side as well. But I mean, they're going to make an argument like that because there's going to be a subway station there anyways. So I really don't think that that secondary plan is going to have a lot of impact on the hearing.
Okay. Sorry, I see Steve has made a comment here that the land tribunal is heavily in favor of the development industry. Party members are generally paid experts. They know how to effectively argue their position and are being paid for it because the people paying those bills understand that they stand to make millions of dollars more if they win that argument. Would you say that that is true? Are you allowed to say?
I'm trying to just trying to understand it. So the party members, I don't know if that means tribunal members.
Yes.
So the member of the tribunal, the adjudicator, is not necessarily an expert. Some of them have legal backgrounds, some of them have planning backgrounds, but not all of them. And then on our side, if we're talking about people making arguments for or against the developer, I mean, the city staff are members of the same professional organization, Ontario Professional Planners Institute, and the Canadian Institute of Planners. I'm a member in good standing with the same credentials that the planner on the other side has. So I don't think that they're any more expert than I am. We've taken different positions for different reasons. But I wouldn't say that they're any more expert than the staff on the city side.
Thank you. Anne McConnell is just saying thank you. This webinar is appreciated and important for the community. Peter Rowe is saying, can you update the secondary plan compared with Vaughan and Markham plans? Are there, I guess there must be new updated secondary plans happening in other municipalities, and are there some common themes that are coming up, especially along the new transit lines?
Yeah, I mean, I think this might be specific comment because Markham is now starting a secondary plan study for this quadrant here. So Vaughan has one just passed, Markham's starting their work. We kind of fell in the middle. I don't think there's a reason for us to update this secondary plan based on Vaughan's. And Markham doesn't have one yet, so we can't really respond to theirs. But I think ours stands on its merits and complies with the current provincial policies that it needs to.
And I'll just add that we had meetings with both Vaughan and Markham and the region staff when we were drafting our plan so that they had an understanding of the vision that we were bringing forward, and just to see if it did align with, especially as Markham was beginning their planning study, to see that our visions aligned and that the direction we would be bringing forward, weren't going to conflict. So Vaughan has landed where they've landed because they've had appeal. They had a number of development applications. As Guy said, they may try to argue that that's now part of the context. I think we have a position for why the built form and the development permissions we brought forward are why they're reasonable. And, Markham is going to go through their process, but we did meet with them to try to coordinate the visions.
Thank you. Okay, Charlotte is asking, is biking infrastructure in the purview of the plan, and if so, were there appeals impacting that?
So there is a cycling infrastructure that we have identified as part of the plan, and it's on page 39 of the link that we shared earlier in this meeting. It's the direct link to the secondary plan document. It's page 39 or map 49.9. It's called Cycling Connections. And there are a number of different connections. We have multi-use trails we're looking to secure, dedicated cycling facilities or on-street cycling facilities. And those are identified in the plan. So as new streets in the secondary plan, for example, on the Centerpoint Mall lands, as they build out, we would be looking to introduce cycling facilities on those streets. Or as redevelopment takes place on other streets, we would be looking to bring forward streetscape changes, which would secure different types of cycling facilities.
Would the bike lane implementation on Yonge Street be, I guess, done after a majority of development the dust has settled, the subway's been extended? Because it seems that installing anything prior would just be torn up.
Yeah, so that work will likely fall under a different program, which is what we have seen up until Finch. So when that gets approved to extend further north, we'd likely see the facilities come forward as part of that, but we would have to coordinate, as development occurs, to make sure that if we are bringing forward streetscape improvements, that, as you said, they're not getting ripped up by a developer who's building. So that work is still to be done. And once that program gets approved further north, we'll have a better idea of how that implementation will work.
Because it'd be hard to see it being implemented before the subway extension is dug up.
Yeah, so that was all part of Reimagine Yonge.
Yeah. Okay, so Paul Hannes is saying, and Paul is also a seasoned community participant. He's on the board of the Yonge Street Yonge Condo Corridor Association. And he's saying, not to be cynical, but my limited experience with the tribunal as a participant has been that my impact was zero. Even the city's team of experts as a party seemed to have little effect on the outcome, and the developer got basically everything they wanted. Has your experience under the new tribunal rule changes with similar proceedings been different?
It's very much a case-by-case basis. I would say the last secondary plan in North York, the Shepherd Willowdale secondary plan, which is Shepherd west of Yonge, the city was successful in defending. So my experience is both sides. We win some, we lose some. But I point to that because that's the last time a new secondary plan in North York has been litigated. And we were successful in that. So I'm optimistic. I think that it doesn't mean, just because there's 18 appeals filed now, doesn't mean all 18 will end up in a contested hearing. It doesn't mean that maybe some of the appeals, and we haven't got into the nitty gritty of all these appeals yet. Doesn't mean maybe there's some good points in some of them. And maybe some of them make sense. And there'll be good modifications that we can support and stuff. And I would say that if it gets to a point where there's city staff think that there's a settlement to be made, we would come back, city legal will come back to city council, because city council is ultimately city legal's client, with a report looking for direction from city council on that settlement. So we're not necessarily done with reports to council, but I'm optimistic that we have a good plan and that it's a defensible plan at the tribunal.
Isn't that great to hear, Paul? There can still be hope and optimism in the appeal process. So I'm just going to do a last call for questions. Does anyone have any other questions? You can type it in the chat. You can also type it on the Facebook reply or comment section, and we can answer those. If not, I have one little question more about the plan, that there was a previous iteration of it where Goulding Community Center, the green extended all the way to Yonge Street. I think I saw that in an iteration. I thought, a piazza, a place for the community to gather, beautiful green space. And then, so when I saw the final one, I was a little heartbroken to see the loss of that. Could you speak about that decision, and are there any possible opportunities that some kind of piazza type space? I know there's a big green space that is going to also be shrunken at the Centerpoint Mall, but something on Yonge Street that would play a similar role for the community as Mel Lastman has played for south of Finch.
Yeah, so I mean, it was an iteration. What we tried to do was the parkland being shown in the secondary plan is kind of, we looked at the permissions at the time for how much parkland you can get through development applications. So the size of the parkland shown on Centerpoint was the amount of parkland that the Planning Act allowed us to get. And then we looked at some other sites. So it does show Goulding enlarged with along the south side from what it is today. And then there is another park coming through what is known as the Goads development, or 5959 Yonge, which is right at Yonge and Cummer. So it's kind of based on that. A lot of the difficulty with parkland is any one singular development does not bring a huge amount of parkland on these small lots, because it's a percentage. So the city has two options. They can get these very small parks or parkettes, nothing like Mel Lastman Square, on a site, or they can take we can take cash in lieu. So I mean, the city does have the ability to go and purchase land to put a park and try and create a Lastman Square, but a Mel Lastman Square in today's land values is a very expensive park.
Wow, we're so lucky to have Mel Lastman Square, but I still dream of a piazza for the northern neighborhood that's being developed. Do you have any last comments to share with all the participants?
No, I
Guy,
mean, I would thank you for the opportunity just to explain to those that are interested about the appeal process and about the upcoming hearing on the 31st. I'm glad to see the engagement. And if anybody wants to reach out to me with more questions, I can just drop my email in the chat right here. Did I get it right? Yeah. And my phone number, although I'm gonna have to pause on the phone number because I can't think and type at the same time when it comes to numbers. So I'll drop both in there. And you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to Councillor Chang, and she can either pass along my contact information, or I can answer through your office. We're happy to help answer any questions. I will say we won't give any sort of legal advice. If people are looking for that kind of what should I do, you're gonna have to get that advice on your own. But process wise, that sort of thing, more than happy to talk with anybody who's interested.
Oh, actually, I did have another question. So 6200 Yonge Street, they are appealing the plan. They're appealing their submission, like what was, but are they also appealing the plan, the overall plan? Like they're appealing their site. Is it 2 appeals now that they're going to participate in?
Yes, it's 2 appeals. They're site specific. So the development application appeal is scheduled for this summer. They already have a hearing date for that. So it'll likely go ahead of the secondary plan appeal. If they're successful, they'll just drop their secondary plan appeal because they got the development they wanted through their, if they're not, then they would continue with their, at least that's my expectation.
Right.
So, but as of right now, yeah, they have 2 separate appeals that'll have different dates, arguing slightly different things.
And if their appeal is successful in the summer, will that change the shape of some of the height limit restrictions that are right immediately beside them?
I don't think it would change it.
No.
It doesn't change, I don't think, our position. One development doesn't completely change our planning opinion. It does start to change the context, but I think, their application came in, I think, before the plan was adopted. They're litigating their site-specific appeal before the plan is adopted. So I think we are able to sometimes differentiate why one thing happened and why it still shouldn't be determinative of the rest of the plan. It gets a little bit more challenging, but we're not going to throw our hands up and say we lost this one, everything's out the window.
Mhm. Well, that's good to hear. So I wanted to let everyone know upcoming, we do have some online consultations. So on Monday, January 23rd, 18 to 20 at the Basca, as well as 6,979 to 6,991 Yonge Street. We will be having community consultations for those two sites. And then on February 6th, and these will all be sent out by my email, so you don't have to worry if you don't catch them right now. 16 to 24 Center Avenue and 6,125 Yonge Street. We will have a virtual community consultation. And on February 15th, we made sure to move it away from Valentine's Day because no one wants to go to a community consultation for Valentine's Day. But so the 15th, the day after, 19 Points Avenue, we will also have a virtual community consultation. And lastly, on February 22nd, 5919 to 5799 Yonge Street will have their community consultation. So they will all be happening via WebEx, but we will have Eventbrite registration through my website, which is lilychang.ca. Not all the consultations are up for registration yet, but as they come up, they will be going out in my weekly email newsletter. And last but not least, Chinese or Lunar New Year is coming up, and we're having a small gathering in the atrium of the North York Center. We're going to have lion dances, some performers, and so we hope that you can all come out, meet your neighbors, and enjoy community Lunar New Year celebration. So those are some of the updates. Sign up for email updates, lilychang.ca. And thank you so much, Guy and Victoria. I'm sure, there are many other things you could have been doing on a Thursday night, but you hung out with us. So we're really grateful for your patient answering of all our questions. And thank you to all the Willowdalers who tuned in. Thank you for being engaged. That's half the battle. And I hope that we can maintain hope as Guy has hope. That we can participate and fight to make sure that our voice matters. So thanks again, everyone, and hope to see you Sunday night at our Budget 101 webinar. Good night, everyone.